What happens when one of the world's most beloved voices sits across from one of daytime television's sharpest tongues? And everything goes off the rails. Before we dive into the chaos that unfolded on that stage, remember to subscribe to Stage View and like and comment, because what you're about to hear is the kind of behind-the-curtain drama we bring you every week. The studio was already humming with a different kind of energy that morning. The View's audience, always lively, always ready, seemed to sense a storm brewing, though no one could have predicted the intensity of what was coming. Cameras rolled. Lighting sharpened. Behind the curtain, Adele inhaled deeply, smoothing her hands along the sides of her sleek black dress. She had done interviews 1,000 times, but this one felt different. She couldn't name why. 30 seconds, a stagehand whispered. Adele nodded. Her heart beat in a slow, heavy rhythm. Something wasn't sitting right, but the show was beginning whether she liked it or not. Out on the main stage, Joy Behar shuffled her note cards, adjusting her glasses with an expression that was half focus, half mischief. For decades, she had earned a reputation for cutting through public personas, for asking the questions everyone else was too polite or too afraid to ask. Today, though, she carried an additional sharpness, as though she planned to cut deeper. Please welcome the incomparable Adele. Whoopi announced, the audience erupting into cheers. Adele stepped out. The applause washed over her like a wave, warm, loud, familiar. She smiled, waving graciously. But as she took her seat at the table, her eyes briefly locked with Joy's. Something flickered there. Not hostility, but something close, a challenge. The moment settled into silence before the hosts began their greetings. Whoopi leaned in. Adele, we're thrilled to have you. Truly. Thank you for having me, Adele replied, her voice soft but steady. Sunny smiled warmly. Your new music is breathtaking. Adele flushed slightly. Means a lot, thank you. But when Joy spoke, the air seemed to tighten. So, Joy said, drawing out the word in that casually combative tone she had perfected over decades. I think it's fair to say people are talking. About your music, sure. But also about your, shall we say, new attitude lately. A murmur rustled through the audience. Adele blinked. My attitude? Joy shuffled her cards, pretending to search. MHM. Yes. The interviews where you walked out. The comments you made about other artists. The canceled performances. You know, people notice these things. Adele's shoulders stiffened, not visibly to most, but just enough for someone paying attention. Whoopi shot Joy a look. Joy, what? We're talking, Joy said, shrugging innocently though her eyes twinkled. She's Adele. People care. Adele leaned forward slightly, brows raised. I mean, no disrespect, but what interviews are you referring to? Joy tapped a card. Last month. You cut an interview short in, where was it, Germany? And people said you snapped at the host. Adele exhaled slowly. That story was blown up. I wasn't feeling well. I apologized afterward. Some said the apology felt half-hearted, Joy replied, her tone airy but loaded. This time, the shift in the audience wasn't subtle. A few gasps. Some curious whispers. Adele sat a little straighter. I can't control how people interpret things. Sure you can, Joy countered lightly. You're Adele. That earned a few nervous laughs from the audience. Sunny tried to intervene. I think what Joy is getting at. But Adele lifted a hand gently, signaling she could handle it. No, really, she said, locking eyes with Joy. If you have something to ask me directly. The studio stilled. Joy set her cards down. Fine. Let's not dance around it. She folded her hands on the table. Has success changed you in a way that maybe you're not acknowledging? Because a lot of fans feel like you're different these days. Adele's heartbeat quickened, a dull, pulsing sound in her ears. Her throat tightened, but her face remained controlled, poised. I'm human, she said softly. I evolve. I grow. I have good days and bad days. Joy leaned forward, eyes sharp. But do you think you've become harder to deal with? A murmur rippled through the crowd, a blend of shock, discomfort, and intrigue. The camera operators, sensing tension, zoomed in on the two women's faces. Adele held Joy's stare, her jaw tightening. I think I've become protective. Of what? Joy pushed. My peace, Adele replied instantly. There it was. Simple. Clean. Honest. Yet it only seemed to embolden Joy. So protecting your peace includes walking off the stage on people? She asked. Joy, Whoopi said warningly. But Adele's expression shifted. Not angry. Not upset. Something else. Resolve. Sometimes, Adele said. Sometimes protecting your peace means walking away from situations that feel disrespectful. Joy tilted her head. And you felt disrespected during those interviews? I felt exhausted, Adele said calmly. And when someone is exhausted, they're vulnerable. I didn't want to have a moment on camera that I'd regret. Joy's lips flattened. But you did regret it. Because people think it made you look human. Adele cut in. The audience clapped softly, uncertain but supportive. Joy didn't smile. No. Unprofessional. Gasps. This time louder. Adele blinked, stunned. Her chest tightened as though someone had pressed a fist into it. For a moment, she didn't respond. Whoopi placed a gentle hand over Adele's. You don't have to answer that. But Adele did. She inhaled, the kind of breath someone takes when they know they're about to walk into emotional fire. You know what's unprofessional? Adele said quietly. Asking loaded questions about stories you don't have the full truth about. Joy stiffened. The table went silent. Even the audience froze. Adele continued, voice steady but trembling at the edges. It's okay to ask tough questions. You're journalists. Hosts. It's your job. But when you ask them without context, without compassion, you're not looking for truth. You're looking for entertainment. That line hit like a slap. Joy's eyes narrowed, but she didn't speak yet. Adele pressed on. I came here today because I respect this show. I respect all of you. But I'm not here to be a punching bag. Now the audience applauded louder, uncertain but supportive, the tension shifting slightly. Joy finally spoke. Adele, no one's punching you. I'm just asking what people want to know. People or you? Adele asked. That question landed with a thud. Joy leaned back, her smile thin and sharp. I'll be honest. Both. Adele nodded slowly. Then I'll be honest too. You could have asked me kindly. Joy opened her mouth as if to respond, but her words were swallowed when someone in the audience yelled impulsively, We love you, Adele. The whole room burst into scattered applause. Adele's eyes softened, briefly breaking from the intensity. She smiled at the crowd, grateful, warmed, grounded again. But when she turned back to Joy, the air sizzled once more. Joy wasn't finished. Look, Joy said, waving a hand dismissively. Nobody's trying to villainize you. But people want honesty. And sometimes honesty is uncomfortable. Adele nodded. Then let's be fully honest. Her voice dropped lower, richer, more emotional. Do you know what it feels like to have your entire life dissected? Every emotion questioned. Every decision judged by millions who don't know you. Her eyes glistened but didn't break. Do you know what it's like to be expected to bleed for people who don't even see you as a person? Joy hesitated. Something shifted in her face, a crack in her armor, but she recovered quickly. That's fame, Joy said. You chose it. Adele's mouth parted slightly, stunned. For a moment, she simply stared at Joy, searching for something, empathy, understanding, anything. But Joy's expression remained cool. Adele swallowed hard. I chose music, she whispered. Everything else came with it. The audience was silent, fully absorbed, barely breathing. Whoopi finally intervened. Let's take a breath. This is getting a little heated. But it was too late. The tension had reached a peak, vibrating in the air like a struck wire. Joy turned to Adele again, her voice softer but still pointed. I'm not trying to attack you. I'm trying to understand you. Adele nodded slowly, then asked to understand. Don't accuse. Something about that line, gentle but firm, shifted the room again. Some audience members clapped. Others murmured. The hosts looked between the two women, unsure of how to proceed. Then Joy unexpectedly laughed, short, brittle. You're good, she said. I'll give you that. What does that mean? Adele asked. Joy shrugged. You know how to turn a moment. Adele's face hardened. I'm not turning anything. I'm speaking. And speaking beautifully, Joy said. Almost rehearsed. Ouch. Adele's jaw tightened visibly this time. Her breath hitched. Well, Adele said, her voice trembling with contained emotion. If I've learned anything, it's that women in my position have to rehearse how they defend themselves. Because we're judged harder than men. We have to be perfect to be believed. Someone in the audience shouted, "Facts!" And the crowd erupted into applause, loud, passionate, supportive. Joy pressed her lips together, silently recalibrating. Adele continued, her voice soft but full of heat. I'm not perfect, Joy, but I don't owe the world a perfect version of myself. Joy started to respond, but Adele leaned in, lowering her voice to a near whisper. And I don't owe you one either. Silence. Cameras zoomed in on both women. The tension was thick enough to slice. And just as Whoopi prepared to intervene again, the floor manager signaled, commercial break in 10 seconds. But the storm had already formed, and the real confrontation hadn't even begun. The second the red lights above the cameras blinked off and the words, "We're in break," echoed through the studio, the entire table seemed to exhale at once. A soft, frantic murmur rose from the audience, like the sound of an approaching storm. People leaned toward one another, whispering, rehashing, arguing in low, buzzing voices. The floor crew moved quickly, adjusting mics, offering water, pretending, at least outwardly, that nothing unusual was happening. But something unusual was happening. A storm had been born right there on live television, and everyone on set knew it. Adele sat back in her chair, the tension visible in the rigidity of her shoulders. She didn't move at first. She didn't speak. She stared down at the table, her fingers lightly grazing the edge as if grounding herself. Whoopi, sensing the heat still radiating from the earlier exchange, leaned toward her. You all right? Adele nodded but didn't look up. I'm fine. Her voice wasn't convincing, and Whoopi knew it. Meanwhile, Joy was reordering her cards. Not casually. Not the usual Joy Behar shuffle. This was tighter, quicker, more defensive. She avoided looking at Adele, though her jaw worked, clenching and unclenching in tiny movements. Sunny quietly sipped water, glancing nervously between the two women. She had seen clashes on The View before, heated debates, political blow-ups, celebrity meltdowns, but this one felt different. This wasn't about politics. This wasn't about a microphone slip. This was personal, and she knew personal hits different. Sarah, sitting at the far end of the table, tapped her pen quietly, lips pressed into a thin line. She wanted to say something light to diffuse the tension, but the energy felt too volatile, like one wrong joke would ignite an explosion. The floor manager approached the table, looking like someone walking into a lion's den. 2 minutes, he said softly. Adele brushed a hand through her hair, finally lifting her eyes. They were sharper now, not angry but focused. Determined. Joy could feel the stare even before she met it. Are we really doing this? Adele asked quietly. Joy set her cards down again. Doing what? Adele narrowed her eyes, her voice low. You know exactly what. Joy exhaled sharply. Look, Adele. It's a talk show. I ask questions. That's the job. You asked questions designed to corner me, Adele replied. That's different. Joy lifted her chin. People want honesty. And I gave you honesty, Adele said. You pushed for spectacle. The floor manager was still standing nearby, trying to look invisible. He slowly backed away. Joy finally met Adele's gaze. If you think I'm the only one who was going to ask, you're wrong. The public wants answers. Adele leaned forward, elbows on the table. Then ask like someone who wants answers, not like someone who wants to trap me. Joy's voice dropped to a whisper. This is television, sweetheart. Drama keeps the lights on. Adele stared at her, stunned by the bluntness. That was when Whoopi, ever the mediator, leaned in, her tone firm but calm. Ladies, we can't go back on air like this. Joy looked away, muttering, I'm fine. Adele laughed under her breath, short, brittle. I'm not. The confession wasn't loud, but it hit the table like a weight. Sunny put a hand over Adele's arm. We don't have to pick this up on air. We can steer the next segment somewhere else. Adele shook her head slowly. No. If she wants the real me, she can have the real me. Joy raised a brow. Meaning? Adele didn't answer. But the look she gave Joy was enough to make the studio air feel charged again. Electric, waiting, dangerous. The overhead lights blinked twice. Back in 30 seconds, someone shouted. The table went silent. Adele lifted her chin, rolling her shoulders back the way performers do before stepping on stage. Whatever she was about to do, she had decided firmly. Joy crossed her legs, straightened her notes, and slid her glasses into place. She had no intention of backing down. Not now. Not after the audience had felt her lose footing in the first segment. 20 seconds. The crowd settled in, eager, restless, hungry for more. 15 seconds. The hosts shuffled in their seats, final adjustments, last deep breaths. 10 seconds. Adele inhaled slowly, her lips tightening into a controlled line. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The red light blinked on, and the storm resumed. Whoopi spoke first, her professionalism steady. Welcome back to The View. Before the break, we were talking with music icon Adele. Joy cut in, smiling politely but with steel behind it. And having quite the conversation. Adele didn't look away from her. We were. The audience chuckled nervously. Whoopi continued. We want to shift the conversation a little. Adele, your new album. But Joy interrupted again. Before we move on, I actually think Adele made a strong point before the break. She said she felt the way questions are asked matters. Adele tilted her head. They do. Joy clasped her hands together. So let me ask you this. What is the right way to question someone who's been unpredictable lately? A ripple of discomfort ran through the crowd. Adele took a breath. For a moment, she didn't answer. She let the silence sit heavily between them, an intentional pause that made the room lean in. Then she spoke. The right way, Adele said, is to ask from a place of curiosity, not accusation, to give someone room to explain instead of cornering them. Joy gave a tight smile. But when celebrities dodge questions. I didn't dodge, Adele said firmly. Joy tried again. You avoided taking responsibility for. I took responsibility, Adele interrupted, her voice rising slightly. I explained myself. You just didn't like my explanation. That hit. Hard. Joy leaned back, crossing her arms. You're being sensitive. Adele's eyes darkened. And you're being dismissive. Half the audience gasped. The other half whispered furiously. Joy smirked, just barely. I'm being direct. No, Adele said. You're being disrespectful. And the room froze. Joy chuckled. A sound that wasn't amusement, but disbelief. Oh, come on. You came into this conversation ready to tear me down, Adele said quietly. You didn't want clarity. You wanted a moment. Joy stiffened. Are you accusing me of manufacturing drama? Adele shook her head. Not accusing. Then, leaning in, she added, acknowledging. Whoopi stepped in. Okay, hold on. But the crowd was erupting in overlapping reactions. Joy brushed a hand through her hair, visibly flustered now. Adele, with all due respect. That's the thing, Adele cut in softly. There hasn't been any respect. Joy blinked, stunned. Excuse me. Adele continued, her voice steady but trembling with emotion. I've been honest, Joy. I told you I was exhausted. I told you I made mistakes. But you keep spinning it to make me look like some diva who doesn't care. Joy's jaw tightened. People think. No, Adele snapped, you think. That line hit the audience like a shockwave. People leaned forward, jaws dropped. Joy's voice grew sharper. I'm not the only one who noticed changes in your behavior. Adele's tone hardened. And maybe instead of assuming the worst, you could consider the possibility that people go through things they don't talk about publicly. Joy opened her mouth, but Adele wasn't finished. You want honesty? Adele said. Fine. She exhaled shakily. Last year was one of the hardest years of my life. Personally, mentally, emotionally. I canceled performances because I wasn't okay, not because I didn't care. And if people want to call that unprofessional, that's their choice. A hush fell as Adele's voice grew softer, more vulnerable. But Joy, you could have asked about that. You could have asked what happened. You could have asked how I'm doing now. Instead, you chose to question my character. Joy stared at her, silent for once. Adele continued. And that's what hurt. The audience let out a collective breath. Several people nodded. Others murmured, "Wow," under their breath. Joy swallowed hard. Something in her expression shifted. Not fully softening, but destabilizing. She wasn't expecting vulnerability. She was expecting deflection. Maybe irritation. Maybe defensiveness. But not this. Whoopi leaned back, watching silently, letting the moment unfold. Joy finally spoke, her voice quieter. "I didn't know that." Adele nodded once. "Because you didn't ask." Joy's eyes flickered downward. A moment of recognition, maybe guilt, maybe reconsideration. But Joy Behar wasn't known for letting herself appear shaken on camera. She straightened in her seat. "Well, you're talking about it now." Adele nodded. "I am." Joy looked at her cautiously. "So, what exactly happened?" Adele hesitated. The audience leaned in. Sunny watched, wide-eyed. Whoopi folded her hands, giving Adele space. Adele inhaled deeply. "What happened was, I lost myself for a while." Her voice shook, but she kept going. "I was trying to be everything for everyone, fans, family, industry people, strangers who thought they owned me. And somewhere in all that, I forgot I was a person. I forgot I was allowed to have limits." The room was silent, softer now, listening instead of reacting. Adele continued. "I walked off that interview because I felt myself breaking. And I didn't want to break in front of a camera. Not again." Joy's face softened slightly, almost imperceptibly. "I didn't realize." Adele nodded. "Most people don't." Joy lowered her gaze, just for a moment. "Look, maybe I came at this wrong." It wasn't an apology. Not yet. But it was something. Adele looked at her. "Yeah, you did." The honesty was brutal. Unfiltered. Raw. Joy swallowed. "But you're right. I should have asked." Adele exhaled. "Thank you." And just as the tension finally began to ease, someone in the audience shouted, "We love you, Adele." Adele smiled softly, for the first time in several minutes. Emotion shimmered in her eyes. But the peace was short-lived. Because Joy, perhaps feeling the shift in the room, in Adele's favor, leaned forward again, reclaiming her stance. "One more question," she said. Adele froze. Sunny whispered, "Joy, don't." But Joy was already speaking. "If last year was so hard, why didn't you tell your fans sooner? Don't they deserve honesty too?" And just like that, the storm roared back to life. Adele didn't answer Joy's question at first. She simply stared at her, long, deep, unblinking, as if trying to decide whether Joy genuinely wanted an honest answer, or was simply digging for another headline. The studio quieted again. The air settled, but only for a moment, like the eerie stillness before lightning rips through the sky. Joy held her expression firm, her chin set, her eyes sharp. She knew she had just reopened the wound Adele had begun to close. And part of her regretted it. But another part, the part made for television, knew the audience was hanging on the precipice of something explosive. Adele leaned back in her chair, inhaling slowly. "Do my fans deserve honesty?" she repeated, her voice lower now, more controlled. Joy nodded. "Yes, I think they do." Adele exhaled through her nose, a quiet, controlled release of tension. "They do," she said. "But honesty comes with timing, and vulnerability comes with trust." Joy crossed her arms. "But they've supported you for years." "And I love them," Adele said, her tone firm but emotional. "But not everything that hurts you is something you can talk about when you're in the pain. Sometimes you have to heal first." The audience murmured approvingly. But Joy wasn't satisfied. "Still," she pressed, "if millions of people invest in your life, your art, your journey, don't you feel a responsibility to let them in sooner? To be transparent?" Adele's expression shifted, just slightly, a tightening around the eyes. A soft flinch. A flash of something old and guarded. She leaned forward. You're asking me why I didn't bleed publicly. Joy blinked. That's not what I... It is, Adele said quietly. It's exactly what you're asking. Joy opened her mouth, but Adele continued, her voice gaining momentum, strength, heat. You think every struggle should be served like entertainment. You think pain is only valid if it's shared on camera. But real life doesn't work like that, Joy. A hush swept the room. Adele's voice trembled, but she didn't break. When I canceled those shows, when I ended interviews early, when I disappeared for a few months, I wasn't protecting my image. She placed a hand over her chest. I was protecting my mental health. And I didn't know the world an explanation for that until I was ready. The audience applauded loudly this time. Solidarity, support. A wave of sound that rolled through the studio like thunder. Joy exhaled, pushing her glasses up. I'm not attacking your mental health, Adele. I'm asking why the silence. Because sometimes silence is survival, Adele said simply. Joy blinked, thrown off balance by the intensity and sincerity of the response. Sunny leaned forward gently. Joy, a lot of people suffer quietly. We can't demand their trauma like it's scheduled programming. Joy shot Sunny a look, more defensive than hostile. I'm only asking what the fans want to know. Adele nodded. And I'm telling you, they'll know when I'm ready to share. Not when the world demands it. A longer silence fell over the table. The two women stared at each other, Joy steady, Adele steady. But the emotion was thick, swirling. Then, unexpectedly, Joy sighed. Not dramatically. Not performatively. Quietly. Like something inside her gave way for just a moment. Look, Joy said softly. People worry about you. They really do. When big stars go quiet, people assume the worst. Adele softened. Not much, but enough to meet Joy halfway. I understand that. Joy nodded. And being a public figure, whether you like it or not, people feel connected to you. Adele's eyes glistened. And that's beautiful. It truly is. But people forget that connection goes one way. They know me, but I don't know them. That landed heavily. Joy sat back, letting the thought sink in. Adele continued, her voice quieter now. And when you're hurting, when you're unraveling, it's hard to share that with millions of people who don't know your heart. It's hard to be raw when you're scared that your pain will become a meme, a headline, a punchline. Joy swallowed hard. The audience murmured sadly. Adele leaned closer to her. That's why I didn't speak sooner. Because I wasn't ready to be dissected. I wasn't ready for comments. I wasn't ready for judgment disguised as concern. Joy looked down. Something about Adele's words, gentle yet painful, cracked through the facade. Whoopi broke the silence softly. This is real. And it's rare. The crowd nodded. A few people even wiped tears. Joy cleared her throat. All right. Okay. She wasn't conceding, not entirely, but the edge in her voice had dulled. Maybe I should have asked differently. I'll give you that. Adele nodded. Thank you. Joy looked at her again, really looked this time. You've gone through something. I can see that now. I wasn't trying to exploit it. Adele nodded again, but her jaw tightened. But your approach made me feel like you were. Joy closed her eyes briefly, something she rarely did on camera. Vulnerability wasn't her comfort zone. But here she was forced into it. Then came the unexpected. Adele, I'm sorry you felt that way, Joy said. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a full apology. But it was honesty. A step. Adele nodded slowly. I appreciate that. The audience clapped, soft, respectful, relieved. But before the tension could dissolve fully, Joy straightened in her seat. However, she added, a collective groan ripple swept through the crowd. Oh no, here we go again. Joy held her ground. I still believe public figures have a responsibility to communicate better. This silence, it creates more chaos. Adele sighed inwardly. Maybe, but communication isn't owed on a timeline. And my silence wasn't neglect. It was self-preservation. Joy tilted her head. Can I ask something personal? Adele hesitated. Depends. Joy leaned forward. During that period, were you scared of something? Or someone? The question dropped like a stone in the room. The audience froze. The hosts froze. Even the camera operator stepped a little closer, almost involuntarily. Adele blinked, stunned by the direction. What? Joy's tone softened in a way it hadn't earlier. You weren't just overwhelmed. You were hiding. I can see it. Adele's throat bobbed. She glanced downward. The silence was thick. I wasn't hiding, Adele said finally, though her voice sounded thinner, more fragile than before. I was recovering. Joy watched her closely. From what? Adele didn't answer. She looked away, toward the audience, toward the lights, toward anywhere that wasn't Joy's eyes. For a moment, it looked like Adele might break. Sunny whispered, Joy, maybe don't push. But Adele lifted a hand. No, it's fine. She sat up straight, breathing deeply, steadying herself. Then she looked at Joy. And what she said next made the entire room fall into absolute silence. I was recovering, Adele said, from a heartache I wasn't ready to share. The words hovered in the air like smoke. Joy's eyes widened slightly. A breakup? Adele shook her head slowly. It was deeper than a breakup, she whispered. It was losing someone. Not through death, not through anger, but through pieces of life falling apart at the wrong time. The crowd softened. A quiet sadness spread. Adele continued, voice trembling. And I didn't talk about it because I didn't want the world defining that pain for me. Joy softened, truly softened. For the first time, she didn't push. She didn't pry. She simply nodded, almost respectfully. I see, she said quietly. Adele whispered, good. The tension changed then, not gone, but lower, warmer, replaced with something else. Something almost like understanding. But the calm was fragile, delicate. And that's when Sarah, trying to lighten the tone, nervously joked. Well, this has definitely been the most emotional interview we've had all season. The audience laughed gently, the tension easing for the first time. Adele smiled faintly. Joy exhaled. The storm had quieted. Or so everyone thought. Because Whoopi checked the clock and said, All right. When we come back from break, we'll take questions from the audience. Adele blinked. Joy froze. Sunny muttered under her breath, Oh boy. Because audience questions meant unpredictability. And with emotions this raw. The studio felt hollow in the seconds after Adele stormed out, as if her absence carved a cold space that even the lights couldn't fill. The cameras kept rolling, because they had to, because millions of eyes were still locked on the view, waiting to see what would happen next. Joy Behar sat frozen, her expression caught somewhere between disbelief and indignation. Whoopi kept her palm raised as though she were still trying to stop something in motion. The audience didn't know whether to clap, gasp, or simply remain stunned into silence. A producer's voice, sharp and strained, cut through the microphones from offstage, trying to salvage control. Cut to commercial. No, wait, hold. But the director didn't cut. He knew. Moments like this were rare, volatile, viral. The kind of moment that didn't just trend, it exploded. Joy finally exhaled, leaning back in her chair as if the confrontation had knocked the wind out of her. Well, she muttered, her voice shaky but attempting humor. That wasn't in the cue cards. Whoopi shot her a look. Not angry. Not amused. More like a silent, exhausted why? A moment passed before she spoke, low and firm. Joy, that went too far. Joy's jaw tightened, but she kept her gaze forward. I asked a question. That's what we do. No, Whoopi said, leaning in. You made it personal. The audience murmured, a wave of whispers brushing through the rows. For the first time, Joy looked unsettled. She wasn't used to being challenged on her own set. Not like this, not in front of the world. But even she seemed unsure of where to anchor herself after the emotional boundary she'd crossed. The cameras zoomed in on her face, capturing every micro-expression. The flicker of defensiveness, the sting of regret, the stubbornness refusing to admit either. Meanwhile, backstage, a whirlwind of frantic footsteps and panicked whispers followed Adele down the narrow hallway. The walls felt too close, too bright, as she wiped the corner of her eye. Not because she was breaking down, but because the adrenaline was still rising, sharp as glass behind her ribs. A staff member called after her softly. "Adele, please, can you stay for a closing segment?" Just a short statement. She stopped only long enough to look over her shoulder, eyes blazing. You don't ask someone to stay after you strip them bare. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Outside the studio doors, paparazzi had already assembled like vultures who sensed a headline forming before the story even ended. The moment she stepped out, flashes exploded. Not gentle, not spaced out, but rapid and hungry, like lightning trapped in a cage. "Adele, what happened inside? Are you and Joy fighting? Was something said backstage? Why'd you walk out?" She pushed through them politely but firmly, slipping into the black car, waiting at the curb. As the door shut and the windows tinted the chaos into a blur of lights, she exhaled, long and shaky, pressing the back of her head against the seat. Her hands clenched, unclenched, trembling with a mixture of fury and vulnerability that she rarely allowed herself to feel. Not in public, and certainly not on television. Her phone buzzed, then buzzed again, then nonstop. Messages from friends, from her team, from fellow artists who had tuned in live, all asking the same thing. "Are you okay?" But the world wasn't going to wait quietly for her response. Back on the set, Joy crossed her arms, her defenses rising like a fortress. "Adele's a grown woman. She can answer questions." "Not like that," Whoopi said calmly. "It was a conversation," Joy insisted. "It was a wound," Whoopi corrected. The audience gasped softly. Joy blinked, stunned by the bluntness. And for the first time, she didn't push back with sarcasm or sharp wit. She simply blinked again, swallowing hard, as if realizing that the moment had spun far beyond the control she thought she had. The show cut to break after that, but it didn't matter. The damage, the spectacle, was already loose in the world. By the time the episode ended, social media had detonated. Hashtag Adele on the View. Hashtag Joy Behar. Hashtag Adele walks out. Hashtag the View meltdown. Each one climbing, then skyrocketing. On Twitter, clips spread like wildfire. Each angle dissected, each line replayed, fans arguing in real time. Adele handled that with so much grace, OMG. Joy went way too far. That was disrespectful. Honestly, this is the most intense moment The View has had in years. Why are artists expected to relive trauma for entertainment? Joy Behar owes Adele an apology. TikTok stitched the confrontation with dramatic music, commentary, slow-motion rewinds, emotional analysis, and some creators even reenacted the moment with surprising accuracy. Instagram filled with side-by-side screenshots of Adele's expression, anger, betrayal, the hurt tucked beneath both. And on YouTube, reaction channels were already uploading breakdowns titled, "Adele loses it on The View, full analysis. Joy Behar crossed a line. Here's why. The most tense TV moment of 2025? The firestorm was global. Back in the car, Adele stared out the window as the city blurred by. Her voice was quiet when she finally spoke to her manager on the phone. "I'm not ashamed of anything I said," she murmured. "But I'm not letting people turn this into some spectacle about my pain. I've worked too hard to climb out of that." Her manager exhaled on the other end. "You handled it honestly." She nodded, even though he couldn't see. "And I'd do it again." Across the country, Joy Behar sat in her dressing room long after the audience left. Her reflection stared back at her from the mirror. Her eyes slightly puffy, her mascara smudged just a bit. She wasn't crying, but she also wasn't okay. Her phone buzzed with messages too, but hers were different. Producers, executives, friends asking what happened, strangers sending criticism, others defending her blunt interview style. But none of the messages eased the weight pressing on her chest. She set the phone down and whispered to no one, "I didn't mean to hurt her." But sometimes intentions mean nothing against the impact. The next morning, every major entertainment outlet had the story splashed across their homepage. Adele's emotional walkout stuns The View. Joy Behar under fire after heated exchange. Adele shares raw truth in live confrontation. and viewers around the world debated where the line should be drawn between curiosity and cruelty. In the fallout, something remarkable happened. Celebrities began speaking up. She didn't deserve that. Artists shouldn't be dragged into trauma on live TV. Adele is one of the realest voices we have, and she proved it today. Even former guests of The View chimed in with their own experiences. Some supportive, some critical, all adding fuel to a fire that now had the entire industry talking. But the person everyone was still waiting on was Adele. Hours later, she finally posted on Instagram. A single photo. No makeup. Soft lighting. Her eyes calm. Her caption was short. Some things are too personal for entertainment. I stand by that. The post shattered the internet. And just like that, the story became bigger than the confrontation. It became a conversation about boundaries, dignity, and the cost of vulnerability in front of a world that never stops watching. A moment that began with tension on live television ended as a cultural shockwave, one that would be replayed, debated, and remembered for years. And as viewers, you were right there in the front row of the storm. Now I want to hear from you. Whose side were you on in that explosive moment? What do you think crossed the line? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your take matters, and the debate is far from over. And if you want more cinematic, emotionally charged breakdowns of the biggest celebrity moments, make sure you subscribe to Stage View, turn on notifications, and stay tuned. More unbelievable stories are already on their way.